raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
Everything you know today is wrong. That's a quote from today's guest, J.C. Glick. You might be thinking, what the heck does that mean? I am too. We'll unpack what J.C. means by this and how it can help us live intentionally. Welcome to another episode of Men Talking Mindfulness, everyone, where we explore the intersections of mindfulness, masculinity, and personal growth. We brought in author, leadership consultant, and retired Army Ranger, Lieutenant Colonel J.C. Glick, to help us understand and break down intentional living. J.C. served in the U.S. Army as an infantry officer for 20 years, primarily in special operations and special mission units with more than 11 combat tours. Since retiring from the military, J.C. has brought his innovative and unconventional thoughts on education, leadership, and resilience into the private sector, working with Fortune 500 companies, international nonprofit organizations, government agencies, the NFL, NBA, and multiple NCAA programs. JC is also the author of a few books, A Light in the Darkness, Leadership Development for the Unknown, and Meditations of an Army Ranger, A Warrior's Philosophy for Everyone. In 2017, he was selected as a TEDx speaker and delivered Rethinking Leadership at the TEDx in Hammond. In this episode, we'll explore what the heck does everything you know today is wrong mean, why intentional living is so impactful, the ingredients of intentional living, and what are some of the obstacles that get in the way, and if you haven't been living life on your terms, where do you start? John, great to be back for another show. How are things in life over there in the house of McCaskill in Colorado Springs?
Dude,
always an adventure.
It is. Yesterday it was 60 degrees. Today we have 6 inches of snow, and tomorrow it's going to be 60 degrees. So yeah, man, it's wild. But hey, just a couple of quick announcements. There's still space in our Mindfulness Adventure Retreat that's coming up just in a few weeks. That's May 18th through the 21st in upstate New York. We're going to move, we're going to breathe, and we're going to get mindful during this 4-day, 3-night immersive experience that includes a 4-week integration program too. So that's after the event. We get online and we make sure that you're able to integrate everything that we taught during the retreat into your everyday life. Also, we have a free mindfulness workbook, and you can get this by texting the word mindful, MINDFUL, to the number 33777. So mindful to 33777. And lastly, subscribe to YouTube. We're putting a lot of content out there that's helpful to you and yours in your life to live that happier, healthier, more fulfilled life. The link is simply www.youtube.com/@ Men Talking Mindfulness, and that is the @ symbol, Men Talking Mindfulness. Now, that all said and done, let's get into our initial breathing exercise. I love that. I love getting that intro out of the way and jumping right into this because it really does help me calm down.
So just skip the goddamn intro anymore, John. Would just be like, hey, welcome, JC. First question, right? Anyway, that could be another style coming up. But anyway, okay, grounding practice.
Grounding practice. Yes, sir. So for those who are here joining us live, for those who are listening later, whatever is safe and comfortable, and what I mean by safe and comfortable, I mean safe and comfortable physically and emotionally. Get into that position, and if closing your eyes is also safe and comfortable, then I invite you to close your eyes. Otherwise, just keep your eyes open. But bring your attention with intention, since we're talking about intention today, bring your attention intentionally to your breath, the physical aspects of your breath. And we're going to start by breathing out as much air as we can, emptying our lungs, bringing our navel to our spine, holding empty at the bottom, deep breath in, filling from the bottom to the top, all the way, holding at the top, and release, noticing how that feels physically and emotionally. Holding empty at the bottom, that's 1. Deep breath in. Again, noticing how this feels as you breathe in, holding at the top, and relax. Relax, letting go, letting go, letting go. Holding empty at the bottom, that's 2. Deep breath in. Filling up from the bottom to the top. Hold and relax. Let go of the breath. Let go of any tension, any stress. Breathing that out and holding empty at the bottom. That's 3. Deep breath in. All the way. Hold and release. 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 That's 4. Last one. Deep breath in. How do you feel physically and emotionally? Hold at the top. And last one, let it go. And as you do so, bring some movement. Roll your shoulders, roll your neck, your head, and open your eyes if they were closed. Otherwise, let's get into this. Gentlemen, great to be here with you. It's such an honor to have you here with us, JC. I'm going to kick it over to Will to start it off. Will, you're muted.
Hey, so thank you, JC, for being with us today. As I repeat myself to myself, and everyone can hear me. So I guess from badass Army Ranger to leadership consultant, like what inspired this? Take us through how you got where you are today, if you will.
Well, I'll tell you, it felt natural, and then I think what I was doing is trying to figure out, okay, like what do you do? What can you do after you've been in the military, and your transition program basically says, hey, you're either going to be a truck driver or you can be a mall security guard. What do you do? And I kind of,
not that there's anything wrong with those jobs, right? Not that there's anything wrong with those, but it's not for you.
I work with a security guard. I
Yeah.
work with a security guard company now, so I'm great with those. I don't like being limited to only those 2 choices.
For sure.
Right.
So it wasn't necessarily what the choices were. It was that there were only 2.
Yeah.
So they were limiting me because of my background for my future, and so I've always enjoyed developing those that I worked with in development, personal development. And as I gave it more thought, I realized that, and maybe this came from an initially bad place because it was probably a screw them kind of feeling, but I felt that philosophy has really been taken over by academics, right? If you look at how we see humans today, it's done by academics, right? Sociologists, philosophers who kind of sit up
scientists
in their world, and they have their experiences, not taking away from their experiences, but they then decide this is what right looks like, this is what virtue looks like, this is the correct way to go, and here's all my logical words that make that so. And what I realized is when you look at the start of philosophy, they were all warriors. They had all gone to combat. They had all seen the worst and the best of the human condition. And, we can supplement that with education and thoughtfulness and study. But being able to see the human condition in its worst and best areas gives us an advantage that others don't have, and it is not only a privilege, but it's a duty that we are able to pass on the things that we've learned from the best and worst times to those that will not get to experience those things. Right? It's something that we have to do, and so it became kind of almost a pilgrimage, so to speak. Of hey, I've been able to get this amazing, I've been surrounded by the best leaders in the world. I have learned some of the best lessons. I kind of should tell people about this. To keep it to myself is wrong. And so, I started working with organizations and just being able to provide. There's so much out there that I thought was incorrect based on what I'd seen, like what we thought was right. Hey, you got to lead by example. Well, no, I don't think there's such a thing as lead by example, right? So I've got to explain that to people. So don't use this bumper sticker leadership. And then people get into this like stuck zone. They're like, well, this didn't work and I was leading by example. Well, yeah, that's because you can't lead by example. That's not a thing. So let's talk about what you have to do. And let's talk about why it doesn't work in the way it's said. And what you have to do is set an example and lead, right? So those, they're both good things. You can set an example and then lead, but you don't lead by example. So those kind of ideas, excuse versus reason, all these things that we grow up as young men and women learning and hearing from people. And I've seen firsthand over, a decade of combat, that's not correct. That's a bad lesson to learn, right?
Yeah.
We have to help people to understand. So that's kind of how I got into it and why I continue to stay in it. I've recently moved over and added to it. I'm the chief of staff of a large security company. And again, what I love doing is bringing kind of a unique flavor to this great team, because I was missing, you want to be on a team, and this is a great team. So I get to be on a team with great guards and great executives and a great owner, and then still help kind of share those things that I'd learned, over my life. Yeah. So that was a long answer to a pretty simple question.
No, I mean, well, it sounds like you have your own personal philosophy, considering we opened with your quote, "Everything you know today is wrong." So maybe we can, jump into that and kind of unpack a little bit of your own personal philosophy. Is that where that comes from, JC? From your experience?
So let me tell you where that comes from. That comes from a guy named John Schwartz, call sign Socks, who
I know John.
So John, John just started working with me again. So he's working at the security company with me as well. And I believe that as military guys, and I think this actually works for everybody, but I know it works for military folks and athletes. We need three kind of mentors. We need mentors who have walked our path and been successful. So former military folks who then went into business and did well. We need just people who have never walked our path, but they did well, right? Just good business people, good people who don't know anything about the military, right? So we need those kind of mentors. And then there's a third kind of mentor that that's really important, certainly in the athlete and military world, is we need mentors who are younger than us. And because in the military, you're constantly being pushed, right? Everybody in athletics, you're constantly being pushed by the next generation, the younger generation. They're not just pushing you physically, they're pushing how you think about things. They're constantly questioning kind of what you just came from and like, well, why are we doing it this way? Shouldn't we do it this way? Or, hey, isn't there a better thing? Or, hey, this piece of technology just came out. Why wouldn't you use that? And when we get out, right, who am I surrounded by? I'm surrounded by middle-aged white men, and my wife and my kids and stuff. But John quickly became one of my younger mentors, right? And it's a symbiotic relationship, but the things that he says and thinks, and I bring stuff to him, I'm like, hey, I want you to read this, tell me what you think. I want to know what his generation is thinking or the vernacular that they use or whatever, so I can continue to stay relevant, right? As opposed to being the old guy who's no longer relevant. So we were having a very philosophical discussion one day, and John is like one of the smartest guys I know. And he said, we were talking about, and I specifically remember what we were talking about, we're talking about the cognitive ability of animals, right? Because that's what a bunch of guys talk about is cognitive ability of animals. And I was saying, like, it's amazing that a few years ago we thought the only animals that use tools were primates. That's the only animals that we thought used tools. And in 5 years, we now believe that almost every animal on Earth uses tools. That's amazing, right? That's amazing that we thought that. And then, so we were talking about that, and Sock said to me, everything we know now is wrong. And I went, holy cow. And you think about it historically, and you think about the humility of that statement, right?
Yeah.
You want to stay humble as a person. Okay, everything I think, yeah, it's probably wrong. There's going to be something out there that I'm going to learn, that's going to be proven. That, like, it's amazing. It's amazing, and it keeps me from being less sure of myself, quite honestly. So it is one of the things when you ask, is there a quote that keeps you intentional? That keeps me very intentional. Hey, you know what? The minute I start feeling a little too big for my britches, or I think I know it, everything we know now is wrong. Oh, okay, great. So that's where that came from. I'd love to take credit for it. But that was all Socks. Socks gave it to me, and I'm going to give him credit 3 times, and then I'll take it.
When I was reading that, I was like, and I started to analyze what that really means, and one thing that came up, a lot of the things that you had said came up for me as well, but it keeps me in that beginner's mindset. So instead of being a know-it-all, right, we can be a learn-it-all. Like, I can learn new things. I could be flexible. Like, be more fluid in the moment. Like water, and just kind of adapting and adjusting instead of being like, stone and just rolling and destroying everything in my path to get my way. So,
well,
awesome. I love that. Thank you for breaking that down.
That reminds me of this book that Will and I are reading in prep for our episode next week on testosterone and how it affects us. And in the book, the author Hooven, is it pronounced Hooven?
Dr. Carol Hooven, two O's, so Hooven, I guess.
Carol Hooven, she talks about what was done a century ago in regards to hormones and hormone therapy, and she goes into, and we'll get into this next show, I don't want to ruin it, but she goes into some pretty extreme stuff. And when you hear about it, you're like, that is crazy. But 10, 15, 100 years from now, people are probably going to look back on some of the things that we were doing as far as hormone therapy and be like, that was insane. I can't believe people were doing that. So, hey, tune in. That's a little teaser for next episode for our audience.
A century from now.
And let me give you some more on that. I was just reading a friend of mine named Rick Collins, who's a very big, he's an attorney for kind of testosterone companies. He does a lot of that kind of law, and he just shared an article, testosterone, which 2 years ago we were saying was kind of the root of all evil for men because we had too much of it, and that's why we're sexual predators and violent and all this other stuff. Turns out that correct levels of testosterone actually help our ability to socialize in a meaningful and thoughtful and connective way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really turning this assumption of, no, it makes them angry and like, look, sexual predators are sexual predators probably for a whole bunch of reasons. But we want to blame it on testosterone that we all share. And then all of a sudden it's bad to have testosterone. And my thought is it's never bad to have anything. You can do bad things with anything.
Right. Yeah. And I actually texted Will this morning. Another book that I read is called Behave. And I'm going to, have you read that? Yeah.
So Socks, believe it or not, Socks told me I needed to read it. So I went and got it.
It's a monster of a book, but it's an incredible, and it really takes a different, not necessarily a contradictory approach or view of testosterone, but an interesting one. So again, another teaser for next week's episode on that.
Lots of
and I'm gonna bring that book up. Lost you, Will. Let's see what happened here. So for while we wait for Will to come back, for your book, Meditations of an Army Ranger, you speak about the importance of living intentionally. And what does living intentionally mean to you, and how can someone start living more intentionally?
So I think, and again, I'm a big dork, right? So I think you have to.
I can tell, JC. You're kind of you're vibing with John and I because we're reading, we're texting books to one another today. Like, so welcome to the nerd crew once again. Here we go.
So to live intentionally is to live with intent, right? And the word intent is really about purpose and about a vision for the future, right? So what am I trying to get to? That's where the word comes from. And so to live intentionally is to know, hey, this is what I'd like to try to be, right? It's aspirational always. And it's about being absolutely diligent in that. Okay, I am trying to be a better person. I want to be a better partner. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better teammate. I want to be. I'm developing, right? Whatever your, those are kind of mine. And I think if we ask around, that tends to be what people believe they want. But to live intentionally towards that goes against the lizard brain, right? Goes against this lizard brain that's about keeping you safe and is afraid of everything, and reacts, doesn't respond. So what you have to do is, and again, I'm a big believer in, it's okay to react. It's okay to react. But what you've got to do is shift that lizard brain reaction into the prefrontal cortex, where complex decision making happens. And then you have to respond. Right? So the goal is, hey, I don't react, I respond right away, or that reaction happens in a split second, and then I go, oh, wait a second, that's okay. The problem comes is we react, and then we don't make a deliberate move to the prefrontal cortex. And so whatever our reaction is becomes our reality. And that reality then is based purely on reaction, right? So is it reality? Well, it's a reality. But is it truth? It's a truth, but is it the best truth? Yeah. And so I think living intentionally is being really deliberate. And if I'm trying to be a better man, well, am I responding to things in a way that a better man does? If I'm being a better father, am I being thoughtful in my response when my kids have some wackadoo idea and I'm like, okay, it's a wackadoo idea. How do I not go, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Don't do that. Or am I being responsive and going, well, tell me more about why you think that is.
Exactly.
And what's funny is everybody thinks that when you're that kind of individual, you're deliberate and intentional, to, like we said earlier, different words, that you're soft. And I don't think there's anything soft about me. I think there's a difference between being soft and being thoughtful. I would like to be thoughtful. I don't want to be soft. And I think that it's okay to not knee-jerk react to everything that comes down the pipe.
Right. We talk about that so often here on the show, and we had a whole episode on reacting versus responding. You talk about the prefrontal cortex, that executive function and the complex decision making. And it's like, I was literally just leading a workshop. I mentioned this in a workshop yesterday. It's like, how do we get there? And it's being, getting to know ourselves in an intentional way and using our body, and our breathing to help ground us. If we have no shot of being thoughtful, being mindful, being intentional, right? If we don't start dealing with like the amazing engineering that we have with our breath and, breath in particular, and beginning to get intentional with our breathing, and instead of, popping off to whatever, punching somebody in the face or tell them to fuck off or something like that, it's just like, no, like I can entertain this idea. All right. And instead of, again, talk about perception, instead of everything being perceived as a threat, perceived is the key word. It's like, no. This is an opportunity So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because that's kind of where is that where intentional living kind of starts. I mean, you mentioned kind of a macro like goal orientation towards intention, but I guess there's also is there a micro side in the sense of like, being intentional, moment to moment, day to day, hour by hour, if you will.
So you're speaking my language now. In
Mhm.
fact, this is, I think, how this all came with John is if you come on the podcast, what would you want to talk about? And I had an epiphany, and you know what? It's like a few months now. It's probably 4 or 5 months old, but it still feels new to me. I was thinking about the harm of the good and the bad of like social media, and one of the things that I see all the time is, and I talk to people about is, well, I got to find my purpose. I got to find my purpose. I got to find my purpose. And we think that our purpose is some grandiose thing, right? It's romantic. It's heroic.
Yeah.
It's this bit like my purpose.
Yeah.
And what I realized is we're looking at the wrong thing. Our purpose is in every single second. My purpose right now is to talk to you. That's my purpose. That is what I am here for, and I'm going to do this as well as I think I can. And this will be my purpose. And when I'm done doing this, I'm going to go walk to another meeting. And during that, I'm going to find purpose in every single step. Is it helping somebody across the street? Is it picking up a piece of trash? Is it at times, not judging somebody? Like this is my purpose, is to not judge what's going on over here. Right? I mean, we think that our purpose is some grandiose thing. And I think what we have to do is not find our purpose, but build purpose in every single second of every single moment of every single day. And that is the micro of it. And when we do that, I had this phrase come to me, and it sounds so glib. I really need to come up with something better because it sounds not good.
We'll let you know. We'll let you know, JC, if it's glib. Go ahead.
No, trust me, it is. Happiness is a choice. And look, here's the thing. When I'm searching for purpose, if I'm trying to find my purpose, I'm probably not happy because I'm on some, like I'm looking, I'm unfulfilled, right? I'm not feeling whole. But if I build my purpose, I am fulfilled, right? I'm almost automatically fulfilled. When I feel fulfilled, which comes from internal, not external, and that's something that everybody needs to start understanding. You don't get fulfillment from what you do or who you do it with. You get fulfillment because you've decided you're fulfilled. You say, yes, this fulfills me. You're not, if we continue to look for things, we're always going to be looking. It's one of those, like you find what you're looking for. If I look for the bad in the situation, I find the bad. But if you look for the good in the situation, you start seeing the good everywhere. And you get to feel fulfilled. And then if you've been deliberate about, I'm going to make purpose in every moment. Because I have that purpose, I'm going to be fulfilled. And I choose to be happy. Right? And that doesn't mean that bad stuff doesn't come your way. And again, it's okay not to be happy for moments. It is. But I will tell you that I was in a really dark place for a very, very long time. And I didn't realize that I could choose to be happy. It just was overwhelming. The feeling of sadness and the feeling of hopelessness was so clear to me that it didn't even occur to me that I could choose to look at the world a different way.
Yeah.
It's like that the proverbial enjoying the journey versus the destination, right? So many of us are seeking out that destination and wanting to reach that pinnacle and arrive. And when we realize that most of the time we're never going to reach that pinnacle, it can be daunting and it can really sadden us and make us stressed, anxious, depressed. But when you do exactly what you're saying, is you find beauty in every single step of that journey.
Yeah.
It's just like a hike, right? I mean, I go on hikes here in Colorado all the time. If my kids ask me, where are we going? We're not going anywhere. We're hiking just to enjoy the journey. We're hiking to look at this leaf,
Right.
at this view. And, you know, you're talking about walking out from this call today and going to your next meeting and finding purpose in every single step. But my question to you, JC, is what is the most common obstacle that gets in the way of finding purpose in every single step, of living that intentional life?
Yeah, me. And what I tend to do is blame it on other outside forces, right? I'm frustrated with somebody at work, or I'm frustrated with a kid, or it's always me. It's me, and no one makes me feel a certain way. An action causes a reaction in my brain, and then I get this emotion, and I allow emotion. And look, emotion's good. I'm not saying bad things about emotion, but when we allow emotion to drive us, man, being happy is going to be, first of all, you're either going to be really happy or really sad. So you're going to have these huge hills and valleys, right?
Right.
And you're allowing others to control you. And I need to control me. And so I get my own way, and I forget that like, hey, I'm in charge of this. I get to pick how this feels. I get to decide, you know, how this responds. This is in nobody else's. This is in nobody else's realm except for mine. And so my biggest obstacle, it's me. It's always me.
Yep, I like that. I'm gonna blame it on you too, JC. You are the obstacle in my.
I was thinking the same thing, John. I'm like, oh my God, I'm off the hook. JC is my problem. I just met him. He's my freaking problem, right?
That's it.
Thanks for hanging yourself out there for us, JC.
It's all right.
All right, we'll go back over to you, man.
No, that also, you know, so that's really, you know, taking a sense of ownership for ourselves. Right, and that's so that's intention right there. You know, can you explain this concept and how, you know, and how it relates? Like, I mean, you kind of touched on it, but go a little bit deeper. It's like, you know, maybe how do you develop, you know, that ownership? How do you, you know, develop like, okay, I'm in charge of my experience? Where does that come from?
Yeah. Well, it comes from fucking up a whole lot and realizing that you created all your own fuck ups.
100%.
You know, I'll tell you, and it probably doesn't come from the best place. And now that you're asking me to think about it, it probably comes from a place of ego. And it comes from this idea of, look, I'm not going to allow things to happen to me. Things are going to happen, and then I'm going to respond or react. Right. Things don't happen to me. Things happen. And it's not about me. It's about they happened. Okay, now I'm in this situation. Now what do I do with this situation? Which probably has, you know, it's this balance of ego and lack of ego, right? So not thinking that the world revolves around me, but also wanting to take ownership of how I respond. Which, you know, and again, it's never to shame me, but it's always to say like, oh, I could have handled that better, or I can't believe, you know, and I still don't get it right? Like I'll be watching a movie, and you know, I'll cry, and I'll be embarrassed, and my wife's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, I shouldn't. I'm sorry, I'm crying. Dude, why would you apologize for that? Like what? Like because we have been because the thing that's amazing to me is we have been conditioned our entire lives to do all these negative things, right? To apologize for showing emotion, right? A healthy emotion. That's a healthy emotion, to be moved by something in a positive or negative way and shed a tear. It's not like I'm beating my wife because I got angry at this football game. This is a positive emotion. and we've been trained, just like we're not trained to collaborate, right? I talk to CEOs all the time. What's the number one thing that they want? Well, my people don't collaborate. Well, yeah, because we spent 21 years teaching them not to collaborate. Your work is your own. Keep your eyes on your own paper. Don't ask your friend for help, right? Yeah. And then we get out in the world where nothing's individual in the world. It's only academia where things are individual. Everything in the real world, yeah, is collective. And
that's interesting. Never thought about it that way.
Right? Mm-hmm. So we need to be collaborative, but it's hard to train that out of people. I don't know that we can ever, shared success. You get A's and you get a B and you get a C. That doesn't happen in the real world. You either get the deal or you don't get the deal. Yeah. And I think that, we have been conditioned over time to be kind of antithetical to what we're supposed to be. Yeah. And I'm very fortunate that I have the ability to think about these things when I recognize that most people don't have the time to think about these things. They don't have the luxury. It is a luxury.
Well, I mean, I think you're also very intentional about thinking about intentionality, right? Like it's something that you do. It's part of your DNA and it's just kind of part of who you are. But you can create that space in your life. Like, coming back to the distractions that we talked about earlier, you said yourself, right? So I'm my own worst enemy in regards to living intentionally. Will's his own worst enemy. Our listeners are their own worst enemy. But what is it that we're doing to ourselves? Maybe it's cruising through social media and watching a million YouTube reels or Instagram reels or whatever they're called, and we burn through that time, and then we're like, oh my gosh, I just don't have enough time. I don't have the time that JC has in his day, right? But then when you really do that time audit and you look at how you spend your time, right, you may find the time to intentionally be intentional, which I don't know if that makes any sense, but talking about that and people's priorities, you ask people, hey, what are your personal priorities? What are the organization's priorities? And, often you'll get, my spirituality, country, family, God, country, family, right? That's kind of how we lived in the military. So many of us use some form of that. But in actuality, what I saw was team. Yeah. God was somewhere else, and I'm not saying that it's any particular God or any particular religion, but it was somewhere else on that list, if it was even on that list. And then family was like way down below, but they would always say God, country, family. Living your priorities versus having your list of priorities, they're very rarely the same thing. So how can we prioritize intentionally what is important to us in our lives and allow or align our actions with those priorities?
How beautifully that was said. I think it's odd that we have priorities without having goals, right? I mean, if you're doing strategy, whether it's a military strategy or a business strategy, you got to figure out where you want to be first. Like, okay, what am I trying to get to? And then whatever I'm trying to get to, that tells me what my priorities are. And if where I'm trying to get to changes, then my priorities should probably change. So to have set priorities that don't align to objectives doesn't make sense to me. Like, you have these priorities, okay, are they helping you get to your objective? And if you feel they are, well, then I guess they're the right priorities. But the first thing, before I ask anybody for their priorities, I go, where do you want to be? And people will be like, well, what do you mean? Like in a year, in 5 years? Sure, whatever. I don't care. Where are you going? What's a thought? What are you trying to become? It's different when you're 20 something, when you're 30 something, at 52 now, I'm a guy who goes, I really like to be healthy, and I'd really like to be happy, and I'd really, like be self-sufficient later in life. So then my priorities have to be physical fitness, right? My priorities have to be keeping my mind sharp. Like, so those are things, your priorities have to come. So the first thing is, and again, it's not a place like I want to be, this multimillionaire living on billionaires row. That's not the objective I'm talking about. The objective I'm talking about is, hey, like, what type of person do you want to be in 6 months, a year, and work towards that. And that should determine your priorities. Now, for those who are very spiritual, maybe that keeps, your God right there. I will tell you that probably the reason, and I think I saw it as well. It was, and I'm trying to think of the real devout folks. I think I saw Team and God like at least side by side, but it makes sense because our objective was to execute and move on. So it absolutely made sense that the team and God would be together, and in my mind, I think that's what God would want. But because I think that's what the universe wants. The universe,
Right.
I think,
Connection.
wants us to connect. I mean, right? Like, again, right next to our lizard brain is this other part of our brain that lights up with connection. That means connection is a human requirement. We have to have it. So to me, everybody gives you a hard time about, well, you're a people-centric guy. It's always about people with you. I'm like, not with me. That's the world. It's about people.
Yeah. So how do we develop ourselves? Like I enjoyed your TED talk about leadership. And how do we, and I think leadership's, obviously good leadership's very important in the world. I remember like working for different people that were fantastic leaders, but I also remember leaders that weren't so great. But that leadership ultimately, we keep coming back to the implicit. We keep coming back to, ownership, right? So like, what are ways that we can like lead ourselves more effectively? So therefore we can be more effective leaders on the outside in our families, at work, or, so what does that kind of take? And what does that look like? Do you have any kind of like, tools or skills that kind of help develop more of that leadership in some way, like the self-leadership?
I do. Yeah, I do actually. And it's going to go against probably things that you've heard. In fact, I'm almost positive I've heard at least two of your guests use this analogy. And it's one that I understand and I don't necessarily disagree with. I just don't think it's helpful, which is you have to put your own oxygen mask on first.
I say that.
Sometimes. My thought is, look, it's funny. I tell this to lacrosse goalies a lot because lacrosse goalies, their heads are like, they don't know what to do, and they're trying to, and if they get into a slump, they get into a bad slump. And instead of worrying about leading people or even doing awesome yourself, what I always challenge them to do is, how are you making everybody around you better?
There you go.
How do you make others better? And I'm going to tell you that part of my getting out, I mean, look, you're talking to a guy who, 11 combat tours, but also 4 suicide attempts. I have 4 suicide attempts, 2 in uniform and 2 after leaving uniform. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of what got me out of a bad place was helping others. Like, if I was so focused on myself, I don't know that, like, if I was worried about putting my own oxygen mask on, I think it might have made me slip deeper into negativity because I didn't see much good about me. I was a burden. I was the problem. And so saving myself was not as good as developing these relationships with people and really seeing an impact on, hey, I can help others. I can, it's funny, and it happens in the veteran community a lot. It's something that I think clinicians need to think about, because a lot of clinicians say the same thing, but they're like, oh, we can't get any veterans out to this event like horse ability or something like that. And I'm like, that's because veterans have a tendency not to want to be the focus of like they already think that they're the problem and they're not looking for help. If you want veterans to come out to Horseability, sponsor children with special needs and ask veterans to help. That's how veterans will come out and help, because they want to be protectors. They want to serve others. And so I'm a big believer in, look, a lot of putting on your own mask is putting on everybody else's mask too, right? I mean, I don't know that there's that binary choice. I think you can hold your mask there and be helping everybody else put their mask on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I see a comment here from Jamie Headley, and it's literally the words that I was going to say, is that was an interesting take on that whole putting your oxygen mask on first. But in helping others, like you said there at the end, in helping others, you are putting your own oxygen mask on, right? So like you mentioned, the veterans want to help others out. They want to be service oriented and do something that they're giving back, and in doing so, that gives back to them. In your dark spots that you were in, and the healing that came after that, it wasn't when you worked on yourself, it was when you were helping others out. And I'll tell you, that's a big part of what we do, me and Will. As altruistic as this all may seem, it is. I mean, we want to give back, but it also helps us, right? Like we know when we get a message from someone who has listened to the show, that, hey, that's what they needed to hear in that very moment. They'll send us a text message or message on social media, and we'll get that. And it helps us. It makes us heal. It helps us to heal, right? And there's definitely that, I don't know, maybe the chicken and the egg or the horse and the cart analogy doesn't quite fit here, but you're essentially putting your own oxygen mask on by helping others. And so it's an interesting take on that. I've never heard that before, so thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Well,
so
I think
go for it. Will.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to comment like that. I mean, there really is no separation. You know, we just perceive that there's a separation. Yes, of course, we have our own bodies, we have our own mind. You know what I mean? We have, you know, have to take care of this physical form, but ultimately, how, like you mentioned, JC, how we thrive as people is through connection, is through connecting again. And how do we connect? Right? Well, get intentional, right? Like, I mean, what are effective ways? Study. There's a million books out there, right, of how to effectively connect. And again, that kind of starts again, calming yourself down, getting out of that reactive mode, and, you know, hijack the amygdala and stuff like that, and then calm down. And then but also when you know, I was able to play sports, but I'm sure you guys felt a lot of that deep team connection. And as an Army Ranger, as a Navy SEAL, it's like you just really, sometimes you want to, you know, kick your brother's ass sometimes, but like ultimately it's just like I feel so incredibly, and even the little team that we have with John and Lindsay and I, like there's a certain triumph that comes through when we're working on a certain project and accomplish a goal, and, you know, seeing things get a little bit bigger, and, you know, there's that deep satisfaction that I can't attain that as an individual. It's just impossible. Like, because we're not meant to be, you know, an island, and a lot of people, especially men, kind of forget that. It's like, it's just kind of comment on that. But John, you had a question or something like that to follow up.
Yeah,
JC,
yeah. Well, I'll turn.
Well,
it sounded like JC was going to say something, so I'll open it up.
No. I think you're spot on. I think there's countless studies that have shown that human connection, you know, is a force multiplier in human evolution, right? And we can forget about the practicality of it, but just how our brains develop, right? I mean, look at brains developed in non-loving or abusive, you know, families, and then brains that are developed in, you know, healthy, you know, good families. So I think there's a lot of science to it, but I think we've, again, let's go back to the conditioning. I think we've been conditioned for a very long time. And the military does this to us, right? This has always been my issue with the suicide intervention or suicide prevention, because I don't really do intervention. But suicide prevention, what we focus on is putting the person in crisis. We tell them, hey, ask for help, be vulnerable. I'm going to tell you, I was making the worst decisions of my life was when I was in that headspace. Why are you asking me to make a good decision, like being vulnerable and asking for help? I'm not going to do that, right? That's stupid to ask me to do that. What we have to do is create a connection with people. And when we're not in that space, we have to learn how to talk to people who are in that space so we can create that connection and we can help them through that. And it's as simple as saying, hey, you're thinking about hurting yourself, or you're thinking about killing yourself. And I'm here. Like, so are we seeking the opportunity to connect with a person, all the time? And that doesn't make you, it doesn't make you soft or bad, or, I'm an introvert. Like, when I'm done with my speeches, when I'm done with what I do, I go home and I chill by myself, maybe with my wife. That's it. But I still require that connection. It is, I mean, it's a universal duty that we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll jump, like, talking about connection. How can we apply these principles of intentional living in our relationships, whether that's a work relationship or a relationship with a loved one, our family, our friends, our coworkers? How can we apply that intentionality into those relationships?
Wow. Well, I'd like to say I had the answer to that. I can tell you what I try to do.
Intentionally.
Intentionally. What gets us into the grip, what gets us into the problem is we react to the situation, right? We react to something our spouse says, we react to something our children do, we react. And so I had a great teammate, a guy named Joe Vega, who was in asymmetric warfare group with me. And we were talking about, when you get angry, a way to like calm down. And it was simple, right? It's like, hey, when you get angry, you should ask yourself, why am I angry? And force yourself to answer that question. Wow. Right? Like, actually force yourself to say, like, well, I'm angry because this person did this, this, and this. And then ask, like, well, is it that person's fault? Like have this conversation with yourself about, like, is this really worth being angry about? And every time I've ever had that conversation, it's never been worth being angry about. It's always been something kind of dumb where I sit there and I go, what am I doing? That's not worth being angry about.
There you go.
And so I've taken that, and now, like, I sometimes worry that my wife thinks I'm a pushover. And I love her. I mean, I love my wife more than I could possibly articulate. And I worry sometimes because she's a very strong, independent, really, I mean, just such an impressive human being. And I sometimes worry that she thinks I'm like soft because, like, I don't care that much about certain things. Like, she's like, well, I want to do this. I'm like, okay. Like, well, what do you want to do? I don't care. That's fine with me. Like, I'm good with that. Like, I don't feel strongly on most things. And I don't, because I've decided that whatever my relationship with her is way more important than anything I feel, right? And the things that she's asking me, they're not immoral, unethical, illegal, or unsafe. They're just different. Like, why is that a bad thing or a big deal? And that goes back to that humility. I think it's about going, like, man, all right, I get my back up a little bit. Like, she says something that maybe I go, ooh, that hurt my feelings a little bit, or ooh, like, what? And then I go, well, wait, was she trying to hurt my feelings? Like, she's not a passive aggressive person. If she was trying to hurt my feelings, she'd just tell me, like, hey, you suck. Like, so you sit there and you're like, oh, this is, again, we go back to, it's me. I'm the, like, I'm the problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the time,
and the solution.
That anger can come. And the solution, right? Which is why therapy is so great, right? So many of the times I go to therapy, which I still highly encourage and I attend regularly. my therapist just leads me to something that I already knew. I uncovered the answer myself. But coming back to your anger there, JC, a lot of the time that anger is because we've been shown a blind spot, like maybe a chink in our armor. We have that mirror shown to us, and now we're embarrassed, and we take that embarrassment and turn that into hurt, and then we take that hurt and we turn that into anger. It's kind of the anger, and Will and I think just in our first season, in our first few episodes, we unpacked anger, and most of the time anger is like a secondary or tertiary response or emotion. It's not even the first one. We get there by going through multiple levels. It's pretty wild if you just stop and you realize, okay, I'm hurt, and I'm hurt because she showed me a truth about myself that I wasn't aware of. And now you're being intentional, coming back to the whole topic of the show, you're being intentional about noticing that and keeping it from going to the next level, or if it does go to the next level, bringing it back down and saying, okay, well, I'm angry, but I'm angry because I was hurt. Okay, now I was hurt because she showed me something that I was unaware of about myself and I'm embarrassed about. Okay, so what can I do to change that? So intentionally noticing and then maybe working on that weakness or that blind spot that you have. I think that's critical for that intentionality in a relationship. So thanks for bringing that up, brother. I appreciate that.
Yeah. What about just fear get in the way of intentional living?
So funny. I was just going to say, I think anger comes from fear. I actually think that so this is the thing is, and again, men don't talk about fear enough. Fear is a constant. It's a constant. It never goes away. It's always in the back of your mind. Your brain is always looking for the saber-toothed tiger that's going to pounce on you. It is constant. It never goes away, and you can't destroy fear. You can't. It's always there. All you can do is create something better than it, and that's courage. And you can't have courage without fear. So fear's got to be present. And I think that a lot of anger and sadness comes from fear. Right. And then you've got to decide, okay, so what am I afraid of? And that's a hard question. Right. So whenever I get mad at somebody, I go, okay, what am I afraid of here? Like, what do I always think about, like, is there something I see in this person that I don't like? And I know I have the same trait and I don't like it in me. And now they're displaying it and that upsets me. And I'm afraid that this is how I come out to other people. Right. So, okay, what is it? It's not that person. That person's just being them. So how am I taking everything there and translating it into this? Yeah, I think fear is now my buddy, Tony Blauer, talks about fear a lot. And I think that what we can do is we can harness our fear and understand it and start to go, okay, yeah, I'm afraid. Now what? So what? Now what? Okay, let's move from that. And how do we move forward from that? And Tony's got some great pieces that really get people out of that fear loop that exists. And that fear loop then takes us into the spiral. And he's really got some really great thoughts on, okay, well, here's how we do it. And because here's the way the brain works, and here's how we can do it as humans. So I don't know if you've ever talked about having Tony on, but he's a terrific. He's got some amazing thoughts on this.
Yeah, we've done a show on fear, so maybe we'll have to do a second one with him on. That'd be great. And when we talk about fear, there's the physical fear, but then there's also probably more often fear of failure or the fear of the unknown, right? Quite often, people won't do something because they're actually they're fearful of the success they may have, not the failure. And they don't get started because they're like, oh man, what if I am successful? Then it's going to take off, and then I'm going to have more work. I'm going to have more effort. I'm going to have to put more effort into maintaining that. It's just going to take too much time and energy, and I'm afraid of that. So there's different levels of fear. And while you were talking about fear, you may have noticed that I was smiling. I sent this video to Will maybe 2 weeks ago. It's a video of my two of my kids. I've got 3 kids, and 2 of them my daughter who is older, and then my son, the middle kid. And we have this like plastic climbing mountain in the basement, and then this giant bean bag. And my son, he's younger than my daughter, but I won't necessarily say braver. Sometimes I think he's just sillier and just throws caution to the wind faster. He's more reckless. So he climbs up on top of this mountain, and he jumps into the beanbag. And I won't say he had no fear, but he kind of overcame the fear faster. And so he, as the younger, is like encouraging my older daughter to jump off this plastic mountain into the beanbag. And he doesn't say, because you said, fear is a permanent thing. Fear is there always. It's not something that you can just stop. It's something that you can overcome, but it's not something that you can just turn off. And he didn't say, don't be scared. He said, you can do it. You can do it. It's okay that you're scared. And I was like, man, this is a little boy saying it's okay that you're scared to my daughter, who eventually, the other very proud dad moment, she stands up on top of this and she puts her fingers together like this and she takes a deep breath and she says, I can do this. And then she jumps off, and it was awesome. And I videoed it from like behind the wall, so they didn't know that I was there. But it's one of my most proud dad moments of all time. Like my little boy encouraging my oldest to do something that she was scared of. Has nothing to do with the show. Maybe they were living it intentionally. I guess that's what it has to do with the show.
Yeah,
but I had to share that anecdote.
Absolutely.
So, go for it, Will. I know you had something.
No. I would just thank you for sharing that story. I mean, it's just like, that's so much of God. It's like, that's where it can really start. And I think it's a great example, John, of like, taking that breath. Courage is acting in the face of fear. And just like, the only way you're going to, one thing I've seen, JC, as far as fear, it's like thinking, like, just imagine we have this amazing capacity for imagination. And then use that amazing imagination, or ability to imagine what's on the other side of that fear. What's the door that's going to open when I get on the other side, when I overcome this perceived obstacle, when I step through, when I literally take action courageously and act in the face of that fear. It's like a whole new world can open up, and that can just kick off a whole nother cascade of events where, you're living life more intentionally, you're living life more passionately, you're walking the path instead of, we mentioned earlier about, how do you walk the path? It's not just walk the path. Yes, of course. But like, how are you placing one day in front of the next, like one foot in front of the other? And it really, if you're going to be all sad and bitter, and it's like, well, what do you think is going to show up on that path, right? A lot of sadness, a lot of bitterness, or if you're walking with joy or happiness or curiosity, you're going to find those things in the path as well. Where there's energetic beings, and intention is so much using our energy, to help us further down that path in a way that creates the kind of life that we want, and living more in our passion and in our purpose as well. This has been great. I don't know. What any comments, JC, or something you want to add?
No, I think that, so we have to have this intention of what's it going to look like? What are we trying to get towards?
Mm-hmm.
But then we've got to act deliberately and say, okay, am I taking those actions to get to this thing, right? So here are my goals. Here's my priorities. Am I aligned in my priorities and goals? And then am I acting in accordance with that? Am I being deliberate? Is this, I always use the Ranger Creed. And the Ranger Creed is aspirational. It's our culture, right? It's who we're supposed to be. And it's not a one-time thing, it's an everyday thing. And you have to live it, right? You have to continue to live it. And so it's a great accountability tool for yourself. And that's what it's meant to be. And sometimes we use it as an accountability tool for others, but it's really supposed to be, for as we become more enlightened, it really should be for ourselves. And we should look at our actions and say, was that in accordance with the Ranger Creed? And if it wasn't, now I got to figure out why. Okay, so why was that decision I made? Again, it's not to shame me. It's not to make me a bad person. It's to say, well, that's an aspiration, and we all aspire to be something awesome.
Yeah.
So why did I not do deliberately the right thing? And I think that is really important.
What's the creed, if you will? I love the military, all that stuff. And you probably
So
had to
Ranger
say
Creed
it.
is, yeah. Oh no, we had to say it. It'll
Oh, we're
take
putting you on the
Yeah,
spot.
memorize it,
Putting
you
you on the
guys. So
spot.
funny. Yeah. Oh no, if you
No,
don't mind. Sorry.
recognizing the volunteers of Ranger fully know the hazards of my chosen profession. I always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and highest degree core of my Ranger regiment. Acknowledging the fact that, right, I can keep going. Oh no, I know it. I know it.
I'm not saying you don't. I knew you did.
It's ingrained.
Don't ask me.
But-
Don't ask me to recite the SEAL ethos. All I know
what?
is.
Oh, God.
Oh man. I could tell you that. Something about earning my trident every day, and I am that man. As a matter of fact, I think now that we're opening up naval special warfare to women, I think it's been changed from I am that man to I am that warrior, but I certainly don't know it by heart. So, hey, Ranger Creed, Rangers lead the way, right?
Yeah, well, no, look. So what I love about it is it's a deliberate culture. This is who we would like you to. You want to be a Ranger. This is how Rangers are, right? This is how we do things as Rangers. And what I love about it is there's like a line in it. Never shall I fail my comrade, or never shall I leave a fallen comrade to fall in the hands of the enemy. Now, that line works in Afghanistan on Roberts Ridge. It absolutely works there. You know where else it works? In downtown Savannah, when your buddy goes off and, hey, we're going to go to the next bar, and the guy's like, no, I'm going to stay here with like these girls, and it's like, nope, you're coming with us, right? So it's this way of being like, are we trying to be the best, the best we can be? In the spiritual world, I think people, or in the Christian world, people aspire to be like Jesus. That's a great aspiration, knowing you're gonna fail that. Like, that's not gonna happen. But you should absolutely, it's a good aspiration, right? And the Ranger Creed is our aspiration. And I'm going to tell you, I failed the Ranger Creed, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a day. But I now know what the rules are where I failed, because I can measure my action against, well, wait, what's the Ranger Creed say? Oh, it says this. All right, well, you know what? I didn't hit it there. Like, I missed it there. And I think that self-accountability, we're always big on, we got to hold people accountable. I have a whole discussion on that, but the first thing I say is we need to start holding ourselves accountable. And that's where it all starts. Like, hold yourself accountable before you hold anybody else accountable. Where did you fail in this situation? What did you screw up? What could you have done better? And especially in the relationships that are closest to us, right? The relationships with our loved ones, or the relationships with our coworkers. We're very quick to blame others instead of just saying, okay, if I'm going to blame somebody, let's look at where could I have done better? Could I have provided better guidance? Could I have, I think you can be self-aware without beating yourself up. I think you're allowed to go, I jacked that part of it up. And quite honestly, you can, you're going to, I just gave my youngest son, who graduates high school this year. He just interviewed me for his leadership class. And he asked me about failure. It was the last question. And I said, what a word that has been absolutely just completely has destroyed us as a race. It has prevented us from achieving greatness because we think that failure is finite. And I don't even believe, can you not achieve a goal? Yes. Does that mean you failed? I don't know. Did you learn something out of it? Did you get something out of it? Are you better because of it? I mean, I have failed more things than I've succeeded at, like a lot more things, like a lot more things. And it's developed me into the person that I am. And I don't think I'm a failure. And life isn't about failure. Life isn't pass fail. It's not a graded event, and it's not pass fail. What you're trying to do is walk a path. Now you get to determine what that path is. For me, I'd like to try to walk the best path I can. That said, I'm probably not going to walk the best path. I'm not going to be Mother Teresa. I guarantee you that. But that doesn't make my path bad, right? I'm not going to be, somebody who gives up all my possessions, and like, I'm going to walk my path, and I'm going to try to do what I think is good in that path to get to my objective, which is to be as good a person as I think I can be. You know what? Maybe let me change that. As good a person as I want to be, because I probably can be. I probably can be better, but I probably don't want to be in a bunch of those situations, right? I mean, I don't want to give up all my possessions and distribute my wealth across everybody. So that's probably a really good thing to do. I don't want to do that, right? Yeah. I mean,
you're being honest, man.
You're
being honest.
But I am going to try. But I am going to try to be the best person that I want to be.
I like that.
And I'm also going to be honest and say, I probably could have been like, I could have done this, and that would have been nicer. And I'll have that conversation with myself. But I'm probably not going to minister to lepers, and I'm not. I'm going to do my thing.
Yeah. I think maybe we're probably going to close up in a little bit, but one last thing I think would be helpful for our audience. It's if someone's out there listening and has been living in reaction most of their life and not been intentional, and just kind of a quote I read. I don't know the exact quote, but if you don't live intentionally, someone else will give you intention. So if somebody is living by someone else's, or even in a victim mindset, if you will, where's a good place to start your recommendation to creating, stepping on your own path and starting to kind of blaze your own trail? Where should someone begin if they're so far away from even taking that first step?
I think for me, it would be about that self-reflection, right? Because when we're in reacting mode, we're thinking about all the things that we're reacting to, right? All the triggers out there, right? As opposed to, wait, hold on, where am I? What's my role? What's my accountability, and what's my responsibility? And we're very quick to point out others' accountability and responsibility, but what's mine? Where do I live in this? And I think that the minute we get in that grip, right? Myers-Briggs talks about the grip, when we're out of our comfort area and we're reacting, we're in the grip. The minute you're in the grip, you got to go, hold on. What brought me here? What is it that I did? I chose to respond to this, right? I chose, the guy cut me off, and I chose to flip him off. I did that. He didn't make me flip him off. I could say, well, his action, I had a bunch of choices after that action. I could have just been like, oh, I guess he's in a hurry, or oh, he'll probably wrap himself around a tree, right? I told you I'm not that good a person. But I have a bunch of choices, and I chose one of them, and to own that and to love that, this freedom. That's freedom, right? To admit that, look, I had a bunch of choices. That's what I chose, and that's why I'm here. Yeah. There's nobody, we are presented now. Unfortunately, the farther we go down the reaction train, the fewer choices we are presented with, until we don't have a choice, right? Until the choices become, I think of, because I'm certainly empathetic to understand people with substance abuse problems. They're in a place where they've lost their freedom. They don't have the choice anymore. But a bunch of choices got them there. Okay, and we do have to address that population. I can't just say pull up yourself by your bootstraps and that's bullshit. You can't do that. But what I do have to do is I have to say, okay, a bunch of choices got them here, but now they're in a place where they have no choices. So, and because the chemicals and like, my boss said to me the other day, you can't fight chemicals. Like when the chemicals take over, like you can't fight it. Like it's like you're losing. So, okay, let's help those people out. But I think that before we get to that dark estate, we're presented millions of choices. What do we choose?
Yeah. Take ownership.
That. Yep, definitely. And that is the definition of intentionality, right? Being intentional with the choices that we make, and deliberate. And right before we jumped into the show, we talked about, I said deliberate and intentional, and I said that's probably redundant. And JC said no, I think they're different, but they're both important words. And I think choosing your choice intentionally and deliberately, that is what this episode is all about throughout, from the beginning to the end. So JC, great stuff here, man. For those who want to get a hold of you after the show, what's the best way for them to do that?
You know what? LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually like the best way. I'm on Twitter and all that other stuff, but I don't pay any attention to any of it. I'm on LinkedIn. Again, as a middle-aged man, that's where I think I belong. I stay in my little box. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Please reach out. If anybody wants to talk about any of these ideas or thoughts, I'm in. And
for our listeners who aren't watching this and didn't really pay attention to the title of this, it's JC, the letters JC, not spelled out. It's JC Glick. Yes. So check him out on LinkedIn and connect with him there. And Will, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap it up with that final closing breath, final closing practice.
All right. Well, great way to start tapping in and begin to take that ownership and get away from the reactivity of things. And again, take that ownership is to start by just finding your breath. This could be where your path or your first couple steps in the path of intention could begin, just by finding your breath. We're just going to do 5 breaths. We'll do this parachute breath where we're going to take a long, slow exhale out the mouth like this. All the way out, long exhale, out, and smoothly exhaling. Let's take a big inhale through the nose and exhale slowly, like you're kind of in a parachute in the sky, gently and slowly drifting down to earth. Again, in. And as you take this long exhale, invite yourself to relax, to ground yourself, to kind of melt deeper into the moment. Again, in. 2 more in. Exhale. Maybe your face softens or your shoulders soften a little bit more. You find a deeper grounding of your feet into the earth. And one more time in. Exhale. And just take a moment and just notice if that's changed anything, if you feel a little bit different, just by taking 5 breaths and using the breath as a tool, getting intentional and understanding. If you've listened to our show a while, we talk about it quite a bit, like how incredibly profound the breath is to your nervous system and to your mind and to how you're going to show up in the world. So open those eyes when you're ready. JC, such a pleasure having you today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I really enjoyed your contrarian viewpoints on different things. So I really thank you for that. We need more voices like that are out in the world like yourself. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Amen.
John, anything else?
Yeah, brother. JC, always good to have you. Good to see you, man. Look forward to, future talks and you and Will getting together there in New York City and seeing what comes of that. And for our audience, if you enjoyed today's episode, if you know anyone, friends, family, colleagues who could benefit from hearing or seeing this show, please share it. Share it in podcast form. Share it on YouTube. Share it wherever you see it or wherever you hear it. We would love to get this word out there and what JC is teaching about intentionality. We appreciate you guys, and Will and JC, I appreciate you too. Until next time, peace.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.